I'm Emma. I'm 24 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've been living in what can only be described as a dating nightmare. But it's not the usual kind of nightmare where you accidentally like your ex's Instagram post from 3 years ago, or where you show up to a first date with spinach in your teeth. No, my nightmare has a name, and that name is Patricia, my mother. Here's the thing about my mother that you need to understand right from the start. She's absolutely stunning. At 52, she looks like she could still walk a runway. She was a model in her 20s, and she's never, not for a single day, let anyone forget it. Every morning, she spends 3 hours on her hair and makeup routine. 3 hours! Most people don't spend that long getting ready for their own wedding. She works out with a personal trainer 5 days a week, and her closet is full of clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. But here's what those magazine perfect looks hide. My mother is a narcissist in the truest, most clinical sense of the word, and her particular brand of narcissism manifests in the most horrifying way imaginable. She hits on every single boyfriend I bring home. I'm not talking about being a friendly, welcoming mother. I'm talking about lingering hugs that last way too long, inappropriate comments about how handsome they are, suddenly needing to wear her tightest, most revealing dresses whenever they come over, text messages sent behind my back, coffee dates she suggests when I'm not around, a constant campaign to make my boyfriends see her as more desirable, more interesting, more worthy of attention than her own daughter. The worst part? She doesn't do this because she actually wants these men. She does it because she can't stand the idea that someone might choose me over her. In her twisted worldview, I don't deserve to have relationships that don't revolve around her. And if a man can be distracted by her attention, well, that just proves he wasn't good enough for me anyway. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that has destroyed every relationship I've tried to build since I was 18 years old. Tyler was the breaking point. He was this sweet, genuine guy who worked as an elementary school teacher. We'd been dating for about 4 months, and things were going really well. So well that I finally worked up the courage to bring him home for Sunday dinner. I should have known better, but hope is a dangerous thing when you're desperate for your mother's approval. The moment Tyler walked through the door, I saw the calculation in my mother's eyes. That predatory assessment she does, sizing up whether this man is worth her effort. And apparently, Tyler passed the test because she immediately pulled him into a hug that lasted way too long, gushing about how handsome he was and how lucky I was to have found him. During dinner, she peppered him with questions. Normal getting to know you stuff on the surface, except for the way she kept touching his arm and laughing at everything he said like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. When I went to the kitchen to get dessert, I heard her tell him, Emma never brings anyone home. I was starting to worry she'd never find someone good enough for her. That's her pattern. First, she establishes that she's the concerned, caring mother. Then she plants seeds of doubt about whether I'm really right for him. Meanwhile, she starts building a private communication channel, positioning herself as the confidant, the one who really understands what's important. 2 weeks after that dinner, Tyler showed me the text messages my mother had been sending him. Questions about his weekend plans, suggestions for yoga classes he might enjoy, invitations to grab coffee so they could talk about my happiness and whether he was treating me right. The messages were subtle enough to have plausible deniability. But I could see exactly what she was doing. I'd seen it all before. Tyler broke up with me 3 days later. He was honest about it, which I appreciated even as my heart was shattering. He said, "I really care about you, but I can't handle your mother. The constant texts, the way she looks at me, the things she says about us, it's too much." I cried for hours after he left. Not just because I'd lost another good guy, but because I realized I was going to spend my entire life alone unless I figured out how to deal with my mother. That's when desperation sparked a crazy idea. What if I could give her a taste of her own medicine? What if I introduced her to a fake boyfriend, someone who could handle her manipulation tactics without getting emotionally involved? The fake boyfriend plan. I needed someone who could match my mother's games without falling for them, someone attractive enough to get her attention, but unavailable in a way she'd never suspect. Someone who loved drama and had zero patience for manipulative people. That's when I remembered Alex Russo. Alex and I had been friends in college before we'd lost touch after graduation. He was studying theater, planning to be an actor, and he was absolutely gorgeous. Tall, dark hair, green eyes, the kind of smile that made people do whatever he wanted. But here's the key detail that made Alex perfect for this plan. He was gay, though he hadn't been open about it in college. I'd seen his social media posts about coming out to his family and moving in with his boyfriend, Marcus. I sent him a message explaining my situation, expecting him to think I was insane. Instead, he responded within an hour. "Oh, honey, this sounds like the most fun I've had in months. Marcus is going to love hearing about this. When do we start?" We met for coffee to plan everything out. Alex was even more attractive than he'd been in college, with this confident energy that I knew would drive my mother absolutely crazy. "So what's the goal here?" he asked. "Are we trying to make her back off, or are we going full revenge mode?" I said, "I just want her to leave my actual relationships alone. If she's focused on you, maybe she'll stop sabotaging my real dating life." "Got it," he nodded. "So I need to be charming enough to get her attention, but unavailable enough to frustrate her." We worked out our entire backstory. We'd reconnected through mutual friends, had been dating for about 2 months, and things were getting serious. Alex would be attentive but not overly affectionate. Successful but not flashy. Interested in her opinion but not seeking her approval. "The key," Alex explained, "is to make her feel like she's in competition with you. Like I might choose her if she plays her cards right." "That sounds terrible," I said. "It is terrible, but it's also exactly how her brain works, right? She can't stand the idea that someone can choose you over her." 2 weeks later, I brought Alex home for dinner. My mother answered the door in a dress I'd never seen before, her hair and makeup absolutely perfect. She took one look at Alex and I could practically see her pupils dilate. "She must be Alex," she said, extending her hand like she expected him to kiss it. "Emma has told me so much about you." "All good things, I hope." "And you must be Patricia. Emma definitely didn't mention how beautiful her mother is." I watched my mother practically melt, giggling like a teenager as she ushered us into the living room. Over dinner, Alex was absolutely masterful. He asked my mother about her modeling career, complimented her cooking, and listened intently to her stories about the fascinating people she'd met over the years. But he also kept one hand on my knee under the table and made sure to include me in every conversation. "Emma is so lucky to have such an interesting mother. I can see where she gets her confidence from." My mother was glowing. "Oh, Emma is always so shy. I keep telling her she needs to put herself out there more." "I think Emma is perfect exactly as she is, but I'd love to hear more about your modeling days. That must have been such an adventure." For the next hour, my mother regaled us with stories I'd heard 1,000 times. Alex laughed at the right moments, asked follow-up questions, and made her feel like the most interesting person in the world. After dinner, while I was loading the dishwasher, I could hear them talking in the living room. Alex was asking about her workout routine and skincare regimen, telling her she looked at least 10 years younger than her age. When we left that night, my mother hugged Alex goodbye and told him he was welcome anytime. "She likes you," I said as we drove away. "Oh, she more than likes me. Did you see her face when I complimented her dress? She's already planning our affair." Over the next few weeks, Alex's plan worked perfectly. My mother started texting Alex within days of that first dinner. Innocent messages at first, asking how work was going, sharing articles she thought he might enjoy. Instead, he responded within 1 hour. "Oh, honey, this sounds like the most fun I've had in months. Marcus is going to love hearing about this. When do we start? We met for coffee to plan everything out. Alex was even more attractive than he'd been in college, with this confident energy that I knew would drive my mother absolutely crazy. So what's the goal here? He asked. Are we trying to make her back off, or are we going full revenge mode? I said, I just want her to leave my actual relationships alone. If she's focused on you, maybe she'll stop sabotaging my real dating life. Got it, he nodded. So I need to be charming enough to get her attention, but unavailable enough to frustrate her. We worked out our entire backstory. We'd reconnected through mutual friends, had been dating for about 2 months, and things were getting serious. Alex would be attentive but not overly affectionate. Successful but not flashy. Interested in her opinion but not seeking her approval. The key, Alex explained, is to make her feel like she's in competition with you. Like I might choose her if she plays.
Friendly attention? Alex laughed. Patricia, you asked me to meet you for coffee 3 times. You sent me photos from your yoga class. You told me you thought Emma and I were settling for each other. Alex pulled out his phone and showed her the messages. My mother had indeed sent him several photos from her yoga sessions wearing sports bras and tight leggings with captions about how exercise was keeping her young. Patricia, Alex said gently, you're a beautiful woman, but you're also old enough to be my mother. This behavior isn't flattering, it's sad. That's when my mother completely lost it. She started screaming about how we'd humiliated her, how we'd made her look like a fool, how she'd never forgive either of us. She threw the wine bottle against the wall, called me an ungrateful daughter, and told Alex he was a pervert for leading her on. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard that my neighbor's dog started barking. For the next 3 weeks, my mother didn't contact me at all. Then I got a call from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. Emma, honey, I need to tell you something about your mother, she said. She's been staying with me since your fight, and she's been telling everyone a very different version of what happened. What do you mean? According to Patricia, you brought home a gay man and pretended he was your boyfriend because you were jealous of the attention he was giving her. She's saying you orchestrated this whole thing to humiliate her because you can't stand that men find her attractive. My blood ran cold. That's not what happened. I know that, honey, but she's been calling everyone in the family, all her friends, even some people at your work. She's painting herself as the victim of some cruel prank you pulled because you're jealous and immature. My mother had also been posting about it on Facebook. Nothing that named me directly, but anyone who knew our family could figure out what she was talking about. Posts about how hard it is when your own children turn against you, how some daughters can't handle their mothers being attractive. I spent the rest of that day fielding calls and messages from relatives who wanted to know my side of the story. Some of them believed me, but others seemed to think there had to be some truth to my mother's version. But then something interesting started happening. Other family members started asking questions. If Alex really was just a friend helping you out, why would your mother have been flirting with him in the first place? My cousin Rachel asked. The only way her story makes sense is if she was doing something inappropriate that made the revelation embarrassing. Within a week, the family narrative started shifting. People began asking my mother directly what she'd said and done that made Alex's revelation so humiliating. She couldn't explain it without admitting to inappropriate behavior. Resolution and life lessons. 6 months after the Alex incident, I started dating James. He was a lawyer I'd met through a friend at work, and I was completely honest with him about my family situation from the beginning. To my surprise, he found the whole story more amusing than concerning. So your mother has been sabotaging your relationships, and you got a gay actor to pretend to be your boyfriend to teach her a lesson? That's either the most brilliant thing I've ever heard or the most insane, he said over our 3rd dinner date. Probably both, I admitted. I like it. It shows creativity and problem-solving skills. James was different from the guys I'd dated before. More confident, more established in his life, less likely to be intimidated by family drama. When I finally introduced him to my mother 6 months later, the dynamic was completely different. She tried her usual routine, the lingering hugs and personal questions, but James shut it down immediately. Patricia, it's so nice to meet Emma's mother, he said warmly but firmly. Emma talks about you all the time. When my mother started asking personal questions about his job and family, James redirected every conversation back to me. Emma didn't tell me she was interested in art history, he'd say when my mother mentioned my college major. Tell me more about what drew you to that field, Emma. When my mother tried to monopolize his attention, James politely but firmly included me in every exchange. That's such an interesting perspective, Patricia. Emma, what do you think about that? By the end of the evening, my mother looked frustrated and confused. Her usual tactics weren't working, and James was making it clear that he was there to see me, not to be charmed by her.
After that dinner, she barely tried to interfere in our relationship. She'd still make the occasional comment about how James was fine, or how she hoped I wasn't getting too serious too quickly, but the aggressive flirting and inappropriate texting never materialized. James and I got engaged 2 years later. My mother's response was telling. Well, I suppose he's acceptable, though I still think you're both very young to be making such a big decision. We were 27 and 31. Here's the thing that still amazes me about this whole situation. My mother never actually acknowledged what she'd been doing to my previous relationships. Even after everything that happened with Alex, even after the family confronted her about her inappropriate behavior, she never admitted that she had been sabotaging my dating life. In her mind, she had been the victim of a cruel prank, not the perpetrator of years of emotional manipulation. And in a weird way, that was actually the perfect outcome. Because my mother's inability to see herself clearly was also what made Alex's plan so effective. She was so focused on maintaining her victim narrative that she couldn't risk behaving the same way with James. If she started flirting with another one of my boyfriends, it would undermine her story about being the wronged party in the Alex situation. Her own narcissism had trapped her into better behavior. The wedding planning had its moments. My mother tried to take over several aspects of the event, suggesting we needed a bigger venue, a more expensive photographer, flowers that would be more photogenic. But James had opinions about everything, and he wasn't shy about expressing them. Patricia, I appreciate your input, but Emma and I have already decided on the menu. Or, that's an interesting idea, but we're happy with our photographer. She couldn't flirt her way into getting what she wanted, and she couldn't manipulate James the way she'd manipulated my previous boyfriends. For the first time in my adult life, I had a partner who was completely immune to my mother's tactics. The wedding itself was beautiful. My mother behaved appropriately, though she did manage to wear a dress that was arguably too attention-grabbing for a mother of the bride. During the reception, my mother gave a speech that was actually sweet and appropriate. She talked about how proud she was of me, how happy she was to see me with someone who appreciated me, and how she looked forward to welcoming James into the family. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd finally changed. Then, during the bouquet toss, she positioned herself right in the middle of all the single women and caught my flowers. Looks like I'm next, she announced to the crowd, winking at James's unmarried brother. Some things never change. But here's what I learned from this whole experience. You can't fix a narcissistic parent by confronting them directly. They'll just rewrite the story to make themselves the victim. You can't change them by being a better daughter or by finding the right words to make them understand how their behavior affects you. What you can do is protect yourself. You can choose partners who won't fall for their manipulation. You can create boundaries that keep their dysfunction from destroying your happiness. You can refuse to play their games while still maintaining whatever relationship is possible. Alex's fake boyfriend plan didn't cure my mother of her narcissism, but it did show her that her usual tactics wouldn't work on everyone. It forced her to modify her behavior just enough for me to have a normal relationship, and honestly, that's probably the best outcome I could have hoped for. James and I have been married for 3 years now. We have a 1-year-old daughter named Sophie, and my mother is absolutely obsessed with being a grandmother. She babysits twice a week, buys Sophie more clothes than any baby could possibly need, and posts constant photos of them together on social media. Sometimes I catch her looking at James like she's still calculating whether she could steal his attention if she really tried. But then Sophie will do something cute and my mother will be completely distracted by the opportunity to be the center of a baby's world. I think grandchildren might be the perfect solution for narcissistic mothers. They get unconditional adoration from someone who's too young to see through their manipulation. They get to feel important and needed without having to compete with their adult children.
The most important thing I learned from this experience is that you don't have to fix your family to be happy. You just have to figure out how to protect yourself from their worst impulses while still maintaining whatever relationship is possible. My mother will probably always be a narcissist. She'll probably always need to be the center of attention, always struggle with the idea that other people have needs and feelings that matter as much as hers. But she'll also probably always be my mother. And despite everything, I do love her. I just love myself enough now to not let her destroy my happiness in the process. And sometimes that's the most you can ask for from a complicated family relationship. The fake boyfriend plan worked not because it changed my mother, but because it changed me. It taught me that I could take control of situations that felt hopeless, that I could protect myself without completely cutting ties, that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. My mother still doesn't think she did anything wrong with my previous boyfriends. She still believes her version of the Alex story, where she was the innocent victim of a cruel daughter's jealousy. But she also knows that her usual tactics don't work on James, and she's seen what happens when she pushes too far. That's probably as close to a happy ending as our relationship is ever going to get, and honestly, I am okay with that. Because I finally have the relationship I always wanted, just not with the person I expected. I have a partner who sees me, who chooses me, who isn't distracted by my mother's games. And that's worth more than all the perfectly orchestrated fake boyfriend plans in the world.